The journey ahead was more dangerous than they had imagined, but they knew they couldn't back down now. We will do it, Ojo said firmly. We will take the crown to the sacred grove and offer it to the spirits. Whatever it takes to fulfill the prophecy, we will do it. Yes, we are ready, Ada added. Nneka nodded approvingly. You are both brave. The gods have chosen well. She handed Ojo a small vial filled with a thick, dark liquid. This is a protective potion, she explained. Drink it before you enter the sacred grove. It will shield you from some of the dangers that lie ahead, but it will not protect you from everything. You must rely on your courage and wisdom to see you through. Ojo took the vial and carefully placed it in her pouch. Thank you, Nneka, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Nneka stood up, her eyes once again filled with that unreadable intensity. Go now, she said. The full moon will rise tonight. You must be at the sacred grove by then. Ojo and Ada rose to their feet, bowing respectfully to Nneka before turning to leave the hut. As they stepped outside into the sunlight, the gravity of their mission pressed down on them like a heavy burden. They hurried toward the sacred grove. Back in the village, the king woke up to realize that the golden crown was gone. He raised an alarm that brought the warriors to his presence. The princess and her friend need to be chased immediately. Get the chariot ready. I'm coming with you, he shouted. No one knew why he suddenly wanted to chase them. No one knew the golden crown was gone, because if they did, no one would take his command anymore. Without the golden crown, he could not command as king. Obi, his right-hand man who had gone with the princess to Nneka's hut, asked if he was all right. We must find Nneka, the king said, his voice shaky. He and some warriors left the palace with speed, heading to the old village where Nneka lived. When they arrived at Nneka's hut, they found no one. Obi entered the hut and noticed that the herbs and Nneka's bag were no longer there. She had relocated to a place unknown. The king was so disappointed that he almost lost control but had to pretend to be fine, or else he would be mocked and dethroned. What is it, my king? Obi asked. The king didn't trust him, so he said nothing. He gave a command that they must spread out into the forest in search of Ada, Ojo, and Nneka. They must be found. The warriors did as instructed, and the king joined them in the search. At the sacred grove, Ada and Ojo arrived late that night and began to prepare to offer the golden crown to the spirits of the Okoji ancestors. They faced terrifying torments, ghostly wails, shadows that reached out to grab them, and whispers that filled them with dread. The fear almost took their lives, but they finally arrived at the altar in the sacred grove. To their shock, they found Nneka standing at the entrance of the sacred grove altar. The sight made them freeze with fear. How did you get here before us? Ojo asked, her voice trembling. Nneka smiled, but it was not a comforting smile. I am not just a human, she explained. I am a spirit being who dwells among humans. She led them in, took the golden crown from them and approached the sacred stone of appeasement. She began to plead for the forgiveness of Ukana and then placed the golden crown on the stone. If the apology is accepted, she said, the golden crown will glow brighter. She placed the crown on the altar, and the three of them watched in silence throughout the night. Nneka begged the ancestors for forgiveness on behalf of the people of Ukana. But nothing happened. It seemed the ancestors of Ukana had refused to do the right thing, she said. Ojo felt sad. She knew she would have to face Ojadili the next day. It was almost morning, and Ojo knew she had to do something. She walked up to the altar and knelt before them, began to cry. As her tears touched the ground, the golden crown suddenly began to glow. The altar of the sacred grove could not stand the tears of the innocent. The spirits there were just and did not harm the innocent. Ojo was innocent of all the troubles. She had been born into a destiny she hadn't chosen. When the crown glowed, they were shocked. Nneka told them that the apology had been accepted. Ada and Ojo jumped with joy and hugged each other. What now? They asked Nneka. You must bring your father, the king, and the mouthpiece of the gods of Ukana to the land they took from us, Nneka said. I shall assemble my people there and wait for them. You have until nightfall. What about the crown? My father really needs it. Ojo said. It is not in my place to decide if the crown should be returned to Ukana. Let our ancestors decide. Before she could say more, Ojo and Ada quickly found their way out of the sacred grove. They knew that if they didn't return the land before nightfall, Ojadili would return, and if Ojo refused to go with him to the forest, he will bring back the curse in Ukana. As Ada and Ojo hurried back to Ukana, a heavy feeling settled in their hearts. They knew that if they didn't return the land before nightfall, Ojadili would come back. And if Ojo refused to go to the forest with him, the curse would remain. Meanwhile, the king and his warriors searched everywhere throughout the night, looking for Ada, Ojo, and Nneka. But they found nothing. As dawn broke, the king suggested the return to the palace. When they reached the village that morning, the king went straight to the queen's hut. Inside, he broke down in tears. The golden crown is gone, he cried. We might lose the throne. The queen, though worried, tried to comfort him. My king, she said softly, it's better to lose the throne than to lose our only child. I pray the gods help her succeed in whatever she is doing. The king's face darkened with anger. So you're not worried about the shame and mockery we'll face? He snapped. Without waiting for her reply, he stormed out of the hut and decided to go to the oracle. Back on the road, Ada and Ojo were making their way back to Ukana. Suddenly, Ada stopped and her face fell with sadness. What's wrong, Ada? Ojo asked, concerned. I'm just wondering what the king will do to me once he realizes his crown is gone, Ada replied, her voice trembling. Ojo looked at her friend with determination and stepped closer. I'll tell him I took the crown, she said firmly. If anyone should be punished, it should be me. No, Ada said quickly. I should be the one to take the blame. They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of their actions heavy on their minds. Then, suddenly, Ada's eyes lit up with an idea. I know what we should do, Ada exclaimed. Let's go to the oracle and tell him what we did first. Then he can take us to the king. That way, it will be easier for us to talk to your father and convince him to follow us to the land at the boundary. Remember, Nneka said we must be there before nightfall. Ojo thought about it for a moment, then nodded in agreement. That's a wise idea, Ada, she said with a smile. With new resolve, they continued their journey, heading straight for the shrine. Watch out for part 8.